Before I came to Japan about 6 months ago, I didn't know much about the place that I'm living in right now, which is in the Fukushima prefecture. The only thing I really knew about the Fukushima prefecture is the nuclear reaction, the nuclear plant incident that occurred during 2011 with the tsunami and the earthquake natural disaster. And even then, I didn't know too much about it other than it affected the northeast part of Japan with great devastation. And when I was telling people about coming to the Fukushima area, at least friends and family or people that I knew uh, in California, the immediate reaction that they got and what they knew about was about the nuclear plant explosion. And some of them even expressed some kind of concern, thinking that maybe that place or some areas in Fukushima might not be a safe place to live. And that's their immediate perception of what Fukushima is about. And understandably so, knowing that they don't know too much, but that's the only big recent occurrence that has happened with Fukushima is the nuclear plant disaster. And so I guess their perception would be understandable. It'd be reasonable if he didn't do like really deep dive research on Fukushima since then that would be your perception of it. And the concern would be legitimate with the limited knowledge that people would have. And so that that brought it to my attention, and I did a little bit of research before coming here. And from what I concluded, it seemed like it was safe to live there and to have a way of life there. People obviously still live here, even to this point, and living a normal life. But it's not until that I actually came here in April and started living here for the past 6 months that I realized that it's pretty much just normal life here in Fukushima. In fact, there's a lot more things about Fukushima Prefecture that I learned about in the course of me living here for the past 6 months. And I just wanted to share a little bit of that, maybe to clear up some misconceptions of Fukushima or to add on to the knowledge of what beyond of just their nuclear reaction and maybe the radioactive materials that have inhabited the land that might have caused concern for people outside of Japan and even within Japan as well. Because you could wonder, well, if there's a nuclear plant reaction, the immediate response is, well, what happened to all the chemicals and the radioactiveness? Did it cause a lot of harm to all the residents? There was obviously evacuations of all the people there nearby the nuclear plant for safety reasons. But is it inhabitable to live in the Fukushima area? And so it's not just people outside of Japan that think that, but also people within Japan, where uh, Fukushima Prefecture still kind of carries that stigma of any produce or any type of thing that comes from Fukushima. It might be contaminated with like radioactive materials or things like that, and it might cause health problems. So there's still that stigma that that is still there for people, even after 14 years of trying to go through this recovery process and intensive screening process of their foods and everything else that comes with it. And so, since living here, I've been obviously I have to eat all the produce here, and they have restaurants here, and like I said, just a normal life. So in terms of my health since living here, there hasn't been any effect. And based on the research that I looked into, it seems like they have done, they, as in probably the Japanese government, health organizations within Japan and across the world, have done an intensive screening process on the produce and the food and water here, to make sure that everything is deemed safe for people to, uh, take the produce and eat the food and live here without experiencing any health problems. And so my time has been good health wise. And on top of that, there's more to add to Fukushima Prefecture. I learned more about the culture here in Fukushima, uh, with all the history and all the tourism that is attached to Fukushima. I've learned so much and also traveled to different places in Fukushima during my time here, and I've learned so much about it. 14 years after the nuclear disaster, what also has been happening, other than like the screening process, obviously, to bring people back there and to make it known to people that it is safe to live here and all the food along with it is all good, is also educating people like what happened with the earthquake and the tsunami disaster, particularly with the nuclear reaction disaster. I believe in the city where the nuclear plant was, they also created a museum to educate people about the incident and everything that happened and what happened afterwards, the aftermath of that, of trying to go through the recovery process of a disaster like that. The nuclear reaction itself, it did evacuate many residents in the west side of the Fukushima prefecture, and they were displaced in other parts of Japan because they just couldn't live there temporarily due to radioactive concerns. But there are many people that did go back, and a lot of those areas where there were evacuation zones, now those are cities, yet again, where people could live a normal life. And so, for me personally, I have not gone to that museum, but I heard things about it that for its purpose, for people to come and educate people about what happened with the incidents and everything afterwards. But I also, obviously built relationships with the local people here, in Tamurashi, where I live in the city of Tamura. And there's even some like residents that have shared with me like, what has been happening, the education process, maybe even educating residents and even the students about the earthquake and everything that's happened and the changes that have been made in response to that. Even like safety protocols, if something similar would happen like that, are intact for students and teachers to really educate themselves on how they could prepare for if something similar were to occur like that. And on top of that, due to my travels of going through Fukushima, like there's a lot of great tourist attractions here and a lot of great rich history that I've also learned. Um, like there's like the place that I work at in Tamora, there's a nice little town where they have the Abakumado uh caves where people would come and visit. So it is a little tourist town that people go to the caves and check out. Um and within that town there's actually a lot of great restaurants and a lot of good food places that I've gotten the chance to eat and spend time with the locals there. I've also been to places like Aizu Wakamatsu, which is known for their famous castle. I believe it's called the Sugura Castle, if I got that right. Surugajo Castle, famous Aizu castle, where there's a history with like the end of the samurai era, with the other opposing Japanese government, where they were trying to do a lot of reform and build into modernization. But the old Edo period of the samurai history, there was a clash there and a big battle there, where the government with the samurai side fell. And I don't know all the details of that, um, but that's just my knowledge of what I learned while being there, and while also other people telling me about the history. And also there's like a famous story of like teenage soldiers that were or teenage samurais that were like on the reserve list, like going on top of a hill and mistakenly seeing like the Aizu castle burning, but that wasn't the case. But they ended up doing the samurai suicide ritual, um, rather than surrendering. But there was, I believe, one teenager that ended up not committing the suicide and lived to tell the story about that. So there's history like that. There's special things like in Aizu, like special cuisine that it's known for, like the sauce katsudon. And if you go a little bit north of Aizu, there's also a little city called Kitakata, which is known for famous like shoyu ramen. That I also got a chance to go and try the delicious ramen, and also seeing the coastal side, um, which is not just south of the nuclear plant that had the incident in Iwaki, and just going around the city and actually having sashimi there, which you might have the perception of thinking it's not safe, but I had it and it was delicious. So experiencing that, and yeah, there's just so much that I learned about here in Fukushima that maybe a lot of people wouldn't know unless you were living here. And obviously visited cities like the actual Fukushima city, visiting Koriyama, which is one of the major cities that I live close to from where I live, and seeing different parts, and checking out different restaurants. And it has been great. It has been great to just experience that, and understanding that specific cities are known for certain types of food and certain types of produce. And even for me, being in Tamarashi, which is closer to a, it's more of a rural area, but what you would consider like a big small town type of feel to it, with the surroundings of a lot of nature and mountain peaks. So that allowed me to appreciate kind of like the rural train line of all the rice fields and the towns that I come across every time I take the Bon Etsuto line, which runs through Koriyama to Iwaki. And I just always appreciate the view of riding that train ride every morning when I go to work. And talking about the mountain peaks, there's so many hiking areas that you could go to and just experience nature. And I'm a big nature guy. I enjoy hiking and going to all these local peaks that I've been to, as you saw in my previous videos. Going to famous peaks like Bondi and Adatara. Getting to see like an overview of Lake Inawashiro, and actually going to Inawashiro and seeing the lake there for myself. So many places here that I visited that just been you know really great to experience for myself. And there's just more to offer from Fukushima, other than that initial perception that I had of just a nuclear incident. That there's like a lot of great nature. There's a lot of rich history about the samurai era, the government, government reform, back over 100 to 200 years ago. And just knowing like people's desire to bring tourism back here, that there isn't this stigma with the food and produce, that this is a place where you could live just fine. So it's not, it's definitely given me a different perspective of what Fukushima Prefecture is all about, from what it initially was before I came here. And so I wanted to share a little bit of that. Now, I don't know every single thing about it. You know, there's still a lot to learn about the Fukushima Prefecture, but a lot of the main places that I visited, or main attractions, tourist places, like I've visited and got to experience what the culture is like specifically here in this part of Japan. So I think Fukushima Prefecture has a lot to offer. It's definitely um, not the most popular places. Like obviously everybody wants to go to Tokyo, Kyoto, the Kansai area, you know, Hokkaido. But you could definitely stop by in Fukushima. There's definitely great places here that you could visit, and you come to realize like it's just like a lot of similarities to a lot of other places in Japan, and also has its distinct, unique characteristics about what makes this prefecture special in its own way compared to the other ones. And obviously, the other prefectures and other parts of Japan have their own special niche, special characteristics about them that make them special. But Fukushima has theirs as well. And I wanted to share a little bit about that to clear up any misconceptions that you might previously have about that. So I hope me sharing that might change your perspective a little bit. Maybe it might even influence you for you to come here to the Fukushima area and check out some places. So if you ever do get the chance, maybe even consider checking some places out in Fukushima, because there's a lot of things to offer here.